Okay, jumping right into it here, DST 1031 pros and cons. We're going to go over three different DST 1031 exchange pros, as well as three different DST 1031 exchange cons. So starting off, the DST 1031 pro number one is diversification. With the DST, the Delaware Statutory Trust, it really allows an investor to get a level of diversification that they oftentimes wouldn't be able to get on their own buying a single property. Typical clients who invest in DSTs usually have anywhere between $2 and $20 million net worths. We do have clients that are in $50, $100 million net worth plus, but a lot of the clients that are investing into 1031 DSTs with us here at K Properties, they've got a $2 to $20 million net worth. So if you buy one property with your exchange proceeds, it oftentimes could be a large amount of your net worth and you become over concentrated into a single asset. Where with the DST, you're able to diversify and exchange your 500 grand, of equity proceeds or $1 million of equity proceeds or, $8 million of equity proceeds into multiple different properties and build a diversified portfolio of Delaware Statutory Trust properties with multiple asset classes. So medical, multifamily, self-storage, manufactured housing, long-term net leases. You're able to build a diversified portfolio by asset classes, by tenants, various tenants, including companies like Walgreens, CVS, FedEx, UPS, Amazon, Fresenius, DaVita, et cetera, et cetera. So you're getting different tenants diversified by, and then you're also looking at different geographic locations. So you're not just buying one property in California or New York or Florida or Texas, but you're building a diversified portfolio in many, many, many different states, different cities, different submarkets within those cities, and it just helps to build a diversified portfolio. And that's one of the main reasons why people like DST 1031 exchange. The strategy of it is to diversify. Now, it is important to note that diversification does not guarantee profits, and it absolutely does not protect you from losses. Okay, there's no guarantee for profits and no guarantee that you won't have any losses. And so we do encourage investors, read the PPMs, look at the private placement memorandum, pay attention to the business plan and the risk factors of investing, and understand that diversification, it doesn't guarantee anything. However, we believe, and many investors believe, it's the prudent thing to do. So DST 1031 Pro number two is that it's a passive investment. So instead of you managing the property like you have for many, many years on your own, the DST 1031 sponsor company or the DST sponsor company is the one managing the property. So for you as an investor, it's a passive investment. There's no more tenants, toilets, and trash. It's a completely passive investment. And so you're not making investment decisions or having to manage the property. A lot of our clients are at or near retirement, and they're looking for a way that they can get out of the day-to-day headaches of owning investment property. And the DST, that's one of the main pros that investors like, is that it is a passive investment. Unlike other types of real estate that are out there, like triple nets, they really aren't passive. They are more passive than, say, an apartment building or a self-storage facility. But you still, as the owner of that net lease, you have a lot of different things that you have to step into day to day. And people think that, oh, triple nets are passive, but they're just not. DSTs, they truly are a passive investment because the DST sponsor company is managing the day-to-days. And for you as an investor, there's no more tenants, toilets, or trash. DST 1031 Pro number three is that these are pre-packaged investments. So 1031 exchange investors, you're able to exchange into a pre-packaged property, a Delaware Statutory Trust, for your 1031 exchange. So many times these DSTs, the property's already closed on, the sponsor's done all their review and analysis of the property before buying it. They've lined up closing, title, escrow, everything's done. And you as an investor get to review all the information. You get to read the private placement memorandum, look at the business plan, look at the risk factors, and decide, does this make sense for your particular situation? And then move forward and close on that DST. Typically, we're able to close investors anywhere between 2 to 3, maybe 5 different business days. So 2 to 5 business days and you're closed on that DST investment. So a lot of investors really like this, especially if they're in a 45-day time crunch. Okay, so obviously with the 1031 exchange, you have to identify the properties that you're going to exchange into within 45 days. So having a prepackaged property is something that a lot of investors really like. And that's, again, ties into pro number one on diversification. You're looking at a menu on the KPI1031.com marketplace. We have typically over 25 different DST sponsors that we have their offerings on our marketplace. And typically it's 20 to 40 different DST offerings available at any given time. And most of these are closed on, they're ready to go, they're prepackaged for you, the 1031 exchange investor, to choose and select which ones you want to exchange into. So the fact that they're prepackaged, it's definitely a pro for a lot of investors. Also, as a backup ID, say you wanted to buy a property. We've had this happen many times. Clients, they're going to buy their own property, but they were intrigued by the DST, and we said, hey, maybe you'll do an exchange with us, later on down the line in a few years. But for right now, feel free to use one of our properties as a backup ID. You can identify it, and if something happens to your property, then we'll be able to move forward and have you close on this DST as a backup. And, a lot of times clients like that idea. They use it as a backup. They just write it down with their qualified intermediary. And then from there, they're moving forward to buy another property, but maybe that property, something came up in their review and analysis and due diligence of the property. It didn't appraise, or there was an environmental issue, or something was wrong with the roof and they couldn't come to terms with the seller. Having a DST that's prepackaged as a backup ID can make a lot of potential sense for investors. Also, you can use it as a cover. Okay, so say you were buying a property, you sold your property for $4 million. You found a property that was $3.2 million, and you want to exchange into that, but you don't want to have to pay tax on that last $800,000. And with the 1031 exchange, you have to purchase equal or greater value, as well as reinvest all net equity proceeds from the sale of your relinquished property. So with the DST, you can use it as a cover. We have clients many times that do that. They close on their other property for $3.2 million, and then they'll invest that last $800,000 with us at K Properties. So that's number three. Next, we have DST 1031 con. So what's the first DST 1031 con? And the first is lack of control. So you're not going to be managing the property. You're not going to be having any day-to-day decision-making abilities. You're not going to be deciding to resurface the parking lot or paint the walls blue, or which tenants to rent to. You're not going to have any of that decision-making ability. And that's going to be with the trustee of the DST, which is typically an affiliate of the Delaware Statutory Trust sponsor company. And so that lack of control can be a con to some investors that really want to be able to paint the walls blue and, vet the tenants and deal with the day-to-days of the property. And so that could be a con if that's what you're looking for. Most of our clients that are looking for a 1031 exchange solution are looking for a passive investment. So they like the idea that they don't have to do those things. They don't have that control decisions, ability, because they want the sponsor to. They want that trustee, the signatory trustee, to be managing the asset on their behalf. So, but that is a con for some people. So that's the DST 1031 con number one. Number two, the con number two is that most DSTs in the market have leverage associated with them. So for those needing to replace debt, this can potentially be good. But for those that are selling a building free and clear, 1031 exchanging into DSTs with debt is a major con, because first, you now have the risk of lender foreclosure, and this could completely wipe out your equity. Okay. Number two, when the property sells, you now have to purchase equal or greater value and then take on more debt. So if you're debt free, you go into a DST that has a 50% loan to value on it, and say you put in, $500,000, that 50% loan to value purchased you $1 million of the DST. Say that, 4, 5, 6, 7 years later, that DST sells, and maybe it sells at a gain. Obviously, there's no guarantees for any gains, and you can lose money investing in any type of real estate or DSTs. But for this situation, this scenario, say it sells at a gain. Well, you're not going to be able to be in the same situation as you were before, because you had paid off your property, maybe your duplex or your 10 units or your piece of land or whatever it was. You had paid off the property. You had paid down your mortgage. You had no more debt. But when you did your exchange, you went into leveraged DSTs. And now, when that DST sells, you're going to have to purchase that equal or greater value and take on more debt. And so this can definitely be a major con for investors that are wanting to stay debt free. They don't want the risk of lender foreclosure and a complete loss of their equity due to a lender foreclosure. And that can happen. And we've seen situations where DST sponsors have gotten into trouble. And that's one of the things that we do with our investors is walk our clients through what are some of the things that you need to be thinking about? What are some of the things that you need to be aware of when investing in these DSTs? A lot of groups out there will just tell you how everything's going to be great. The sponsor's great. The property's great. Everything's great. Well, no, it's not. There's risks associated with these. You have to understand what's going on so you can make an educated decision. And that's what we do at K Properties, which I believe we do a very good job of walking our clients through those pros and cons and those risks that they need to be aware of. So for those investors, these having debt on most DSTs, the vast majority of DSTs in the market, 90% plus. There's been times in the market where 100% of the DSTs available were leveraged. There's debt. So for those investors that don't want that risk of lender foreclosure, that's a major con. But fortunately for investors on the KPI1031.com marketplace, like I said earlier, we have over 25 different DST sponsor companies. And at any given time, it's typically anywhere from 5 to 10 of our DST offerings on the marketplace. And again, there's, 20 to 40 typically overall offerings on the marketplace, but typically at least 5 to 10 of those offerings are going to be debt free. And those debt-free DSTs have no risk of a lender foreclosure. So that's something that people need to be aware of, is that having debt, especially when you didn't have debt before, can be a major con as you have the risk of lender foreclosure. So considering debt-free DSTs is something people definitely should consider prior to completing a 1031 exchange in the DSTs. Con number three with DSTs is that there's no guarantees. One of the major cons for investors when investing in DSTs is that there is no guarantee for monthly cash flow or appreciation. DSTs are essentially investments in real estate, and real estate never has any guarantees. Just like the properties that you're selling and exchanging out of, there's no guarantee that your tenants would pay rent on time or rent at all for that matter. There's no guarantee that property values were going to go up. And in fact, property values did go down. We've seen that before in 2008, 2009, 2010. We've seen values drop. And so it's definitely something that investors need to understand. There's no guarantees with DST investments. And that's why it's really important that you do talk with us about the potential pros and cons of DST investments. You understand the risk factors. Also, we'll provide you with the private placement memorandum for each of the offerings you're considering. And you're able to read those with your family, with your CPA, with your attorney. And you're able to dig in, and we encourage you, read the business plan of the offering and the asset, the buildings. Read the risk factors of the offering and the asset and the buildings. Understand those risk factors. So the fact that there are no guarantees is something that investors need to understand, and it is a con of DST investing and real estate investing in general. So at K Properties, we have participated in over 30 billion DSTs from over 25 different DST sponsor companies. We've helped thousands of investors complete 1031 exchanges nationwide into DST investments. I personally started investing in DSTs in 2008 and personally have over 60 different DST investments that I've made for my family since then. So this experience is something that we pass along at K Properties to our investors, and our investors get the benefit of working with a group that truly does have the expertise and specialization in DSTs to help them understand those pros and cons as well as the risk factors when considering 1031 exchanging into DSTs.
So if you visit KPI1031.com, you'll be able to log in for free access. And then also you'll get a number of different resources available to our investors on KPI1031.com. You get a free book on 1031 DST properties. So we'll send you a copy of that. A free subscription to the 1031 DST Digest magazine, which has all sorts of case studies, tenant overviews, educational resources and articles in the 1031 DST Digest. You'll get access to free educational 1031 DST conference calls. We host weekly conference calls every week with our investors on various topics in it regarding 1031 exchanges, asset classes, financing, debt-free, zero coupon offerings, different strategies to use when thinking about a 1031 exchange into DST properties. You get very, very educational conference calls. We'll get you access to those. Our team's here to help. We've done a lot of these DST transactions. We've helped thousands of investors nationwide complete 1031 exchanges into DSTs. We're here for you. Reach out to us at any time, and just really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today.